So before we get started with today's video, I'd like to be completely honest with you about something. I am not a bass player. Back when I was a young guitarist, my philosophy on bass was fairly narrow-minded. I viewed it as a larger instrument that one could lazily rattle notes off of until there was something of substance between the drums and guitars. I had no obsession with Cliff Burton, Jaco Pastorius, or any other icon of bass, except for Lemmy, but that's because he's an actual deity. Praise be. So for years, I neglected bass as the foundational instrument that it is when it came to writing and recording music. And as you can guess, my music sounded like shh. My demos sounded about as heavy as a sad old balloon. At the time, I was a young and broke musician working as a barista for my corporate caffeine overlords. Seeing as how I could barely afford to pay rent, I couldn't really afford to buy a bass. So I tried some tricks to try and fake it into my recordings. First, I tried pitch shifting my guitars lower in order to make a fake bass. Not only did this sound terrible, it was a giant waste of time. Don't recommend it. So then I tried using virtual instruments to program bass via MIDI. I wasn't exactly thrilled with the outcome. Programming bass was a giant pain in the balls. This was before all the really cool virtual instruments we now have today. Frustrated with compromises, I finally decided to head down to my local guitar center and just pick up a bass. I only had two requirements. One, it needed to be something playable, easy on the hands. And two, it needed to be cheap. It didn't take me too long to find a bass suitable to my needs. Immediately, it just felt so much better to have a real instrument in my hands. However, as soon as I plugged it in, I ran into my next issue. I had no freaking idea how to dial in a good bass tone. Fast forward to 2023, we now have access to some truly incredible sounding bass plugins. For this video's demonstration, I'll be using my Sterling Sub Stingray 4. Everything on this bass is stock, though I do plan on changing the pickup and preamp at some point in the near future. It's by no means the greatest bass in the world, but when it came to buying a bass, it was super comfortable to play, and at this price point, that was really hard to pass up. Since then, it's served me incredibly well. All that said, let's plug this in and see what kind of tone we can get today. All right, so kicking things off with the BassKnob STD Classic by Bogren Digital. This is essentially an Ampeg SVT emulation. Right away, a fairly overdriven, kind of low output sound. A lot of that has to do with my bass pickups. They're not really tuned for this style. So I'm going to boost the input probably to like right there. That's good. See if that helps a little bit. It's a little bit better, but let's crank this up. Much better. So as you can see, ready to roll. I'm not going to get too picky with this. All right, here we go. All right, so here's why I love tracking with this thing. Essentially, I load it up, I push the gain up a little bit, I adjust the input maybe a little bit, and then I'm good to go. Is it the most perfect sounding bass plugin ever? No. Is it the most flexible? No, but it just works, and that's exactly what I wanted. Let's check out how BassKnob sounds in solo. Plenty of low end, plenty of that kind of mid grind saturation and a little bit of boost in the top end, enough to keep it kind of articulate and easy to understand. Let's check out what it sounds like in the arrangement. What can I say? It just works. That's why I like it. Moving on. So here we have Neural DSP's Parallax. This is an incredible bass plugin. It's very much geared towards the kind of modern metal, hardcore, high gain camp, but for that, it does more than enough. So looking at the features here, we have our low end compression, we have our mid drive and our high drive, and some post EQ. I am not gonna fiddle with this stuff too much, so I think I'm going to jump into the presets and check something out. So right off the bat, there's a lot of very familiar names in here, but I like Forster Savell. He recorded the album Sound Awake by the band Carnival, and that album has just massive bass tones. So let's check out this bass riffs preset. Sounds cool, sounds super glassy, definitely nice and compressed. Let's see what this sounds like in the arrangement. Sounds sick, definitely usable. Let's check out a different preset. Let's check out Nolly Grind 2. So as you can tell, everything is a lot more boosted. The low end compression is just jacked up. We've got plenty of saturation on the mid drive and the high drive. And what's really interesting is this EQ move over here. The low mids are boosted at the 500 mark. The kind of regular mids are scooped out a little bit, and then the high shelf is just cranked. Let's see what this sounds like in solo. Sounds pretty awesome to me. Let's see what it sounds like in the arrangement. Hard to argue with those results. This is kind of an unusual move right here, but hey, who am I to critique Nolly's EQ structure? The guy obviously knows what he's doing when it comes to modern metal bass tone. All right, so here we have a really interesting plugin. This is the Neural Amp Modeler, and it's completely free. What this is some kind of crazy machine learning AI algorithm plugin that acts as a profiler. It can essentially profile your amps if you have the setup to do so, very similar to the Kemper profiling amp, to the Quad Cortex, or to the most recent Tonex. I kind of had to do some weird digging for a profile for this plugin, but eventually I was able to find this SansAmp SVT no cab profile, and then I just found an Ampeg cab profile on the same website. I used the tonehunt.org. Let's see what this sounds like in solo. I mean, it sounds like exactly what it says it is. It sounds like a lightly boosted SVT with an Ampeg that's mic'd up. As you can tell, it's not nearly as saturated or distorted as the BassKnob or the Parallax plugin. So I'm just gonna try something here. I'm gonna try using Reaper's free distortion plugin on the front end of the signal going into this and see if we can get some similar results. That sounds pretty awesome. For essentially what is a free setup, we have some pretty killer bass tone. Let's see what this sounds like in the arrangement. That's crazy. I did not expect that to work that well, and honestly, that makes this fairly comparable to these two. Given this one's a lot more work, this is not included in this plugin. I'm sure if you wanted this to work in a mix, you're gonna have to use a lot more compression and a lot more EQ to sculpt this thing. But for a free plugin and the fact that it does have profiling capabilities, that's insane. Needless to say, I'm very impressed, and I will be doing further investigation on this plugin in the future. All right, so between these three plugins, there's something here for everybody. These days, great tone can be achieved quickly and at a relatively inexpensive price, whereas in the past you had to have the time, money, and the experience in order to achieve this level of bass production. For me personally, I love the ease of use that is the Bogren digital bass knob, with the simplicity of the Amp Knob series, something I've commented on in the past. However, I do recognize that one plugin is not a fit for every need. Having access to tools like Neural DSP's Parallax can be incredibly helpful, especially when you need that extra step of flexibility when you're searching for a tone best suited to your style. And if you're just starting out, you're brand new at this, and you can't yet afford those plugins, the Neural Amp Modeler is completely free, and it has the potential to produce incredible tone. However, that's completely up to you, and it's up to the amp and cab that you choose to load into it. So if you're new to using plugins, your mileage may vary. I'll post links to all three plugins down below, and as I said earlier, I am not a bass player, so while I'm sure I could have mentioned a million other plugins for bass that sound awesome, these three have just worked best for me so far. Alright my friends, thank you very much for making it to the end of this video. My question for you now is, do you have a favorite amp sim for bass? Whether it's one of these three or something else entirely, let me know in the comments down below what your go-to software bass rig is these days. And if you enjoyed this video and you'd like to support me, feel free to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe as well. I would greatly appreciate it, as those things do tend to help me in the algorithm when it comes to pushing my content out there. As always, keep an eye out for more videos coming soon, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace!
Subscribe, motherfucker.